Well, welcome. I guess it was Nick that I met at the
Yeah,
show.
yeah, that was me. Brad was looking at some horsepower parts, so so left me there to man the station. And thanks for having us on, man. Really cool what you got going on. So
Yeah, glad to do it. I mean, when I was walking around, we met over at the Diesel in the Desert Truck Show a couple weeks back over in Chandler, Arizona, and I was walking down the vendor rows and your equipment looked not exactly what I was expecting to see when I looked over, so I had to come check it out, and the more you talked about it, the more intrigued I got listening to it. I was a bit of a MPG hound back in my driving days. I was always tweaking something trying to get better fuel mileage. And so, yeah, hearing what your product does really got me interested. And then I sent over the information to my brother. He's interested. And so, anyway, maybe we can go back to the genesis of this for you guys. Like, how did you even get in the business where you're in the business that you're in?
yeah, so our dad, our grandpa, our great grandpa, they've all been in trucking. So growing up around diesel engines, it's just always been something we've been interested in and been heavily involved in. And just really through networking, knowing some of the right people and a lot of research, we came across a manufacturer in Germany who builds a half micron filter. And we've been able to work with him now for about a year and a half and got the exclusivity to sell in the US as well as in Canada and really started doing a lot of testing on fuel systems. As far as we know, we're the only ones in the world who have done half micron fuel systems on a moving truck, not just like a stationary fuel filtration system. So it took about a year of research and development. Our dad was kind of our test dummy with his trucking company. He was really good to work with on it. And after about that year, we calculated his savings and it was significant. And fuel is really what most our customers are interested in. But once they see how well the filters work, we're usually doing oil systems for them as well, extending their oil life. And there's a lot of benefits beyond fuel economy by filtering your fuel. And the same goes for, filtering your engine oil to such a fine level. And so that's a long answer to kind of how we got in it and what we do.
But yeah, I decided to marry up talking to you guys along with interviewing my brother specifically around, some of the adventures he's been down the last, let's say 8, 9 years with these new engines and the DEF systems and I mean, he's been through multiple motors back in 2017. We went through deleting the DEF system, trying to get, I mean, he was underwater so bad in that truck after we bought the truck with one motor and then he's on the third motor less than a year later and just going, yeah, I mean, your regulations are nice, but like we got to stop blowing up motors here. Even that came with a whole other slew of problems as well, because the engines are manufactured in a way and it has challenges and people, you got to buy the program for the ECM to operate the truck without the DEF system, and then the dealers automatically update because they pull it in the shop and see that the DEF system's not up to date. So then they go overwrite the software that you just bought. And now nothing works because there's no DEF system and all the sensors are going haywire because they're not there anymore for the software update you just put on it. So yeah, and a lot of it, especially now, it comes down to being able to treat the fuel some way, either right with some sort of additive or filter it in such a way that you can get what's being circulated back in through the fuel system out of that fuel and not going into your engine, right? Because these engines just don't last long. Or
Yeah. The issue with the new technology and the new motors really is just that the engineering behind them, I mean, they're excellent motors. Everything is much, much tighter. There's tighter tolerances in the block. There's way tighter tolerances in the head. And then the fuel rail pressures have just continued to increase.
Mhm.
So like, a 2007 Cat C15 is like at 20, maybe 26,000 pounds at the most. That's what it's pushing through the fuel rail. The new trucks are up to 40,000 pounds. And so the particles or the crap in the fuel that typically would not be getting pressurized and sent in now does, which is why we really, we have an excellent entrance into the marketplace because of how finicky and how sensitive these new trucks are. Filtering them has never been more important.
The newer
Right.
the truck is, the more important that you have some sort of ultrafine filter to actually protect, even if there was no fuel economy increase, but to actually protect the entire motor, which 90, we believe most motors fail from the top end down. So if you can clean up everything that goes into the top of the motor, typically the whole motor will live and last a lot longer. And by doing so, it's been proven that we can reduce the soot and the carbon drastically, which in turn reduces the amount of diesel exhaust fluid because you're doing less regens because you have less soot to burn. So
Based on our DEF consumptions, we predict that we can take for example, an EGR that would typically fail and push it to about 3 times that normal life before it fails, just in the reduction of soot getting sent right back into the engine.
Yeah, I mean, this is all the way around, right? This system, the way that it's engineered in the fuel and the DEF and the soot that's going back in through the motor, it's just creating havoc in all these components. My brother's kind of solution that he's been running with for the last couple of years is, I don't know if you've heard of it, is the Pittsburgh Power treatment, the stuff that runs a couple hundred, what, 230, 240 a gallon, depending on where you buy it. And you put a couple ounces in each time you fill up. And he's noticed the same thing, right? He gets a little bit of a bump in fuel economy and he gets a little bit of a decrease in usage of DEF.
we've got a couple different customers of ours that actually are very proud of that exact product. And not that we've necessarily done in-house testing or anything. Most of our customers, unfortunately, are a little bit larger, or that's kind of who we target. And on a large scale, we've found that it's hard to rely on drivers to calculate the ounces needed based on what they fill. Not that the additives don't work. I think that if you can do both, you're really going to be in a good spot.
Totally.
I mean, the ROI is just kind of lying around based on how problematic all these systems are without doing anything, right? Whether it's the cost of replacing engines, the wear and tear on the engines, the wear and tear on the DPF system. And that's not counting the fuel you save or the DEF that you don't have to buy, right? I mean, there's a lot of ROI here to get. And one way or the other, we got to get out of this trap of replacing engines every 500,000 miles, especially, they cost twice as much as they did 15, 20 years ago, and they last half as long.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's
It's a
a
problem.
it's a serious problem, and we like to think we're part of the solution, and we've done a lot of testing. I think I told you at the show, Tony, part of what we do is regular analysis of fuel, as well as engine oil. We help a lot of customers understand what the life of their engine's really at and how it's performing. So it's something that we're passionate about, is helping these guys, especially owner ops and small, medium-sized companies. I mean, that's what our family does, right? So it's fun for us to help those guys out. Most of our customers are seeing a really good ROI year one. I think our average right now is what, Brad? Is it 5 to 1?
Usually for over the road trucks, about a 5 to 1 return year one. And then the years following, it's stupid. I mean, we're talking anywhere between 50 to 25 to 1 for over the road. The trucks that do anywhere from 50 to 60,000 miles a year, more local trucks, it's closer to like a 2 to 1 year one, but still a 10 to 15 to 1 every year after that. So, and that's just the return on immediate fuel and DEF savings. That doesn't include any of the real long-term savings of your motor should last longer. Instead of crapping out at 500,000, let's see if we can get this thing to 750 or a million. I mean, that's the idea.
Yeah, and the other components too, because you're cycling through those other systems significantly less, right?
Yep. hmm And what we found too is there seems to be a bit of a disconnect between the engine manufacturers and the engineers that design the injectors. We've contacted injector manufacturers directly and picked the brains of their engineers to figure out what cleanliness levels they need fuel at. And then as soon as we get off the phone with them, we'll call Cummins or Detroit and ask them how clean the fuel needs to be. And they have two completely different answers. And in part, the injector manufacturers have such more advanced engineering than what is required by the World Fuel Charter. So that's part of it. But if everyone really dug in their owner's manuals and started reading and call these injector manufacturers and ask them how clean their fuel should be, I think they'd be really shocked that some of these huge corporations are putting such loose tolerance filters on their trucks.
Well, yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the filters because we were emailing back and forth. My brother had some questions about filtration and cold weather applications for your system, knowing that he's based out of Minnesota, but runs up into Alberta quite a bit in the wintertime. But tell us your perspective on the cold weather applications and fuel filtration that you guys have tested out with your system.
Yeah, so we emailed a little bit back and forth about it. But one of our first actual bigger clients is located in Alberta, and most of their trucking is within Canada. They come in the States as well, but so tons of exposure there to really, 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 really cold climates. What we have found using some of inside information from our clients, but also just in-house testing, the number one cause of issues with gelling it really is just if there's water present at all. If there's water present in because most of these trucks have a water separator on them,
Hmm.
and typically that is what causes the problem is there's water present, and most drivers, even owner operators, it's sad to say, but most people do not religiously drain the water out of the water separator. And every water separator, I mean, pretty much they come factory that way, have plugs on the bottom so that you can drain them. And the most manufacturers suggest you drain it daily. And I know for a fact that it does never gets done. And so we've had people call us before saying, this thing's gelled, it's not starting or whatever. And I'm like, well, it's -20 and you're in a blizzard. How often have you been draining your water separator? And they're like, I don't even know how to do that. So I think the number one issue there is actually just water present. And the issue is that if you're not staying on top of that, when it does get to extreme climates and you shut the truck off for a period of time, things are just going to start freezing and gelling. Now, when people do take care of it and they're on the ball, like our customer in Canada, because they don't really come far enough south to put in fuel without heavy additives for the winter, they don't necessarily have any issues. And so we found that whether our height tolerant filter is on or not really doesn't make a difference whether the thing gels or not. It has much more to do with where they're picking up fuel and what kind of additives are in it and how often are they draining their water separator if they're running fuel that doesn't have any additives for the winter.
Yeah, my brother and I were talking about it on his truck, right? I haven't owned my own truck for probably 13, 14 years, but that period of 20 years that I did own trucks, the return, especially like on a Detroit engine, like a Series 60, the return, it was putting back so much warm fuel that as long as you didn't turn the truck off, your fuel temperature was going to stay high enough. It was a tough truck to gel up unless you had a water issue in the fuel, but now since they don't return nearly as much fuel as they used to, like my brother's newest truck, it has tank heaters
Mhm.
to keep that temperature up and kind of replace the function that returning that fuel did, especially up north. So as long as he's maintaining things like you said, you're probably not going to have any more problem than you would otherwise gelling up.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's been our experience with it at least.
When we design our fuel system, we actually design them with a bypass valve. So if something was to gel up in our filter, just our filter, which has never happened, it's very easy to just flip the bypass valve and bypass the filter system. We would hate to hear about one of our customers getting stuck somewhere because it gelled up on them. So we put that in place, and most of our customers that run up north have that on. A lot of the guys down here in Arizona don't. It's an option. We like to put it on just in case, but yeah, there's certain unavoidables. There will pretty much always be water in your fuel. And you brought up a good point. The fuel that returns to the tank is warm. And in cold temperatures, that creates a lot of condensation
Mhm.
inside the tank. And that's where, a lot of the water actually gets in the fuel in the winter. Your engine block does the same thing. I mean, you get condensation on the inside of your block, and that's what really can start to kill your oil. So not a lot of people recognize that. It's cool you did. And that's something we try to educate our customers on as well. There's almost always going to be water in your fuel, so you really need to stay on top of your water separators. It makes a huge, huge difference.
Mhm.
I think a nice thing about that bypass valve is too, is you can isolate the component out of the system and you can easily tell where you might, is this a water separator regular fuel filter problem or is it your product's problem? Well, it's easy. If you bypass your product and you still have the
No
problem,
problem.
that's not it.
And that's why I say, Tony, and that's what I said in the email too. Like, if our filter is gelled, uh, you're gonna need to change all your filters because we have had several customers call and say, "Hey, I think that my truck seems like it's struggling. It's starved for fuel. It might be getting gelled or whatever." Okay, bypass it. Yeah, still doing it. Okay, well, it could be gelled, but regardless, it's not because of the filter that we put on. Rather, it's just the nature of the beast. We always advise that all our customers take at least at all times one spare filter with them, so that they just got it on hand in the case that they absolutely need to swap it out. But
Oh
yeah,
yeah, that's definitely something that should be in everybody's kit, right? A set of filters, either a jug of diesel or a siphon to get diesel out so you can fill it up, because you don't want to put a dry filter on there.
Yeah, it depends. Some trucks prime nicely, others don't. Depends on the engine manufacturer, and nobody wants to sit there and pump for 20 minutes in the cold.
Right.
Yeah, there's things that you hope these guys have on them at all times. And for us, we like to be more than just the guys who sell them a filter, but we really do try to be more of a consultant and follow up and see what their results are and see what's going well and what's not and help them improve. The more money they save, the happier they are. And it only benefits our business as well.
Yeah, and if you're gonna make the kind of investment to purchase a systems like yours, you want to know why you're doing it, really why you're doing it, and how the entire system works, not just the part that you're buying and slap it on next to the other parts.
Exactly. And that's actually why, with all our customers, we will install a filter at no cost to the customer and run a test with them and show them how it works and let them see the benefits firsthand. We usually do an 11-mile loop somewhere around what the customer's going to drive speed wise, just normally, whether it's 62 or 78, whatever they set their cruise at. We'll do an 11-mile loop, take a before fuel economy average, and then we'll run that exact loop after we put a filter on and we always see an increase. We've never had anybody say, never mind, get rid of it. So we want people to challenge us to an extent, I guess. But we love showing people how it works, and that's more important to us than just selling a system. We really try to educate them on this stuff, and people are super smart. I mean, a lot of these guys already know this, but the more we can help, the better.
Oh yeah. Yeah, like I jump on other podcasts and other YouTube videos and it's like I turned on the NASA channel or something. I'm like, what are these guys even talking about? Like, he's still talking about trucks. Like, what parts are those? And then the Australians are really into the details of their truck. Like, there's a couple Australian podcasts that I follow. And first of all, they throw you off because they got a bunch of weird words for stuff. But like the stuff these guys know about trucks, I just feel like, man, did I even never drive trucks? Like, I just feel like I don't know anything. The other thing, too, I think that's important is like we were just talking about. I guess I always filled up my fuel filters because my dad would have hit me in the back of the head with a crescent wrench if I didn't. But that was also 35 years ago. Things change, right? But some of our habits don't. So, especially these new systems and stuff, it's good to get a refresher and or an update on what we know about how they work because stuff changes too.
Big time. It's true. One of the biggest things we've seen in terms of whether you want to call it tribal knowledge or old school trucking is people are religious about changing their engine oil. And I think I told you at the show, Tony, we have a truck with 200,000 miles on it on the same engine oil. And that engine oil is 7 times cleaner than brand new engine oil. You talk about the cost savings of that on the oil side, beyond just what we're saving repair wise on the bottom end of that motor. It's really incredible. But there's a lot of ingrained old school trucker in us, a lot of us, and that's a big offense to not change your engine oil.
Hmm.
Uh, so you'll see manufacturers are pushing the boundaries already. A lot of these manufacturers are saying they can go 60 or more thousand miles without doing an oil change. That's what Detroit will tell you on a new DD15. So we like to push that even more and do it through science with data analysis and lab testing and consulting on the customer end. But that's one of those things that we've seen as far as like the old school habits that guys have and that we have too. That's one that kind of throws them for a loop. But when they can grasp it and we can help them, it saves these companies a lot of money.
What do you think the top end of that is? Like, how long could you theoretically run that oil?
So the manufacturer of these filters got his start in the big cargo ships that go across the sea.
Hmm.
And when this all came about 15, 20 years ago, they put some of these exact same filters on it's a $32 million motor. Okay. And when they have to change their oil, there's nowhere to dispose of it. So it's a huge issue for these cargo ships. So they were very interested in obviously testing this product and seeing how it would do. It has been over 15 years and they have yet needed to change their oil. I mean, it's literally insane. It still seems crazy even to me.
Yeah, it does.
But now the other thing is with these cargo ships, they have full-time crews of engineers watching the motors. And on this ship, obviously, they filter the fuel as well. But when I tell somebody that, most people it's just so bizarre. But the reality is, if you can just control the quality of the oil and ensure that you're taking out any of the condensation that's occurring with every time the motor is turned on or off, there's just condensation. If you can pull that out as well as the contaminants within, you do two things. You can, one, prolong the life of that oil almost indefinitely. Now, if there's something else that goes awry with the motor, you might have to do an oil change. But for the most part, as long as the motor is in good standing, there's really not a need to change the oil. Now, we always say the only way you know is if you're analyzing. And we suggest third party, whether that's your local cat dealer or a local lab, somebody that, has a stamp of approval of saying whether or not the oil is good or not. So pretty remarkable, pretty crazy. It's all just from proper filtration. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really good filtration. Yeah, it's wild to think. It just makes me want to go buy a truck right now and slap these systems on and see how it compares to just the average results of the same truck. I mean, let somebody else run the one without it to compare it to. I don't want that one.
Yeah, and that's been one thing that I'll call it a challenge for us. There's so many variables between one truck to the next, from tire size to rear ends to how the driver drives to the weight of the load or the amount of drag they're going through if there's a lot of wind. So to really get a real idea of fuel savings, it's very hard to nail down like a really good scientific test. A lot of the time it comes down to a lot of these trucking companies have telematic systems, pretty much just a fancy OBD2 reader. And it'll just tell you exactly what's going on in that motor. And we've seen quite remarkable results in our testing through the telematics system. It's hard to say, sometimes people come back to us and will give us a number that's so high. It's as much as it would benefit me that if it was true, I typically tell them there's a lot of variables. There's probably something else going on. I don't think it's that big of a difference, but we have seen results up to 20% fuel economy increase. So huge amounts. Even for a one man owner op, if you're doing 100,000 miles a year, you're making your money back really quick and keeping more for you and your family or for more chrome parts. I mean, whatever you want to do with your money.
Yeah, and if you're reducing DEF usage by 50% or something like that too, I mean, that's a significant cost as well.
Yeah. Yep. It's a lot of money. DEF's expensive and we've seen a reduction of up to 50%. I'd say it's typically between 30 and 50%, but yeah, it's pretty steady there, close to the 50 mark on a handful of fleets that we work with and that give us reports. And we wish we could get more data, but these guys are really busy and it's hard for them to sit down and map this all out when they're brokering their own loads and and getting after it. So we understand that, but we really do like to work with the customer after the filter's installed and be there to support them along the way.
Yeah, I've got a couple of folks that I know. I mean, we're not friends, but we know of each other. I'm going to reach out to and see because they're fanatics about this stuff, right? These are the guys who are doing everything possible and monitoring. I mean, they've got programs on their laptops. They're monitoring everything because they're really trying to understand it and really trying to push the boundaries. Double digits, averaging 12, 13, getting 16, 17 miles per gallon on 53-foot vans and reefers with Volvo engines and Volvo trucks. So they're really trying to stretch the boundaries. It'll be interesting to hear their take on your guys' product and see if we can't get one of them to try it too and see what the results are. Because the data's it's got a lot of variables, but also somebody who's already fanatical about it has a good baseline to compare off of, right? Even though, yes, the wind's different today, the load, the weight's different today, the terrain's different today, but those guys have enough baseline understanding of their equipment that they'd be able to kind of root out some of the more common variables and kind of help just distill your data down to a really accurate degree.
Yeah, and that's an ideal customer for us because they can see the benefit really quickly. That would be awesome. Yeah, send them our way. I'd love to throw a filter system on and do some testing with them. And yeah, I mean, it's never ending for us. So we're always out doing stuff. We're going to a mine site tomorrow, doing some stationary equipment for them. We're really trying to expand, but the trucking industry is just what we know and what we're really familiar with. And so that's the area that we broke off into and have been pushing into pretty hard the last few months.
Yeah, well, awesome to meet you guys. I'm glad I ran into you at the truck show over there in Chandler and awesome to get a chance to talk to you today. Why don't you let everybody know how they can find you?
Yeah. So you can just look us up. We got a website, pureflowsolutionsllc.com. We're also on social media. It's just Pureflow Solutions, and you can find us.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll throw the link up there. I'll do a specific Facebook post to hit that crowd, and I'll throw it up on the website too, so everybody can find your solutions and reach out if they got more questions and go from there.
Sweet. Thanks, man.
Awesome, guys. It's Friday afternoon. It's about time to, well, you guys are going to a mine site, and I got a podcast to edit, so you guys have a great weekend, and we'll run into each other soon. I got to come swing up by your place.
Yeah.
Sounds
Yeah,
good,
we
man.
love that.
Thanks, guys.
Yep,
Yeah.
you betcha.
Bye.
Bye.